Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I get a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We're calling a roll. Go for it.
Commissioner Aaron?
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Bear with me.
And then I need a motion to approve the county commission minutes from June 14th.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Aaron's?
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes.
Commissioner Landine?
Yes. All right, move on to regular business. Sure, you're gonna get us started, or?
I am.
Okay.
So I've printed off the
wait.
budget books.
Wait, I didn't do public comment. Hold the phone. Opportunity for public comment. Is there, if anyone in the audience wants to come up and address the board, come on up.
That would be you two over there. Anyone of you want to stand up?
No?
Guess not tonight.
All right. Now we'll move on to regular business.
Okay, so I printed off quite a bunch of stuff for you guys. It's a lot of it in different orders. The first one is gonna, in your white book, is gonna be the budget worksheet. That includes every budget through the county, and it shows the trends for the years. The next one is the budget listing, and that shows just what the budget's gonna look like per item for just 2023. And then I've got the general fund revenues, general fund expenses, and then 201 and all other budget revenue and expenses. So that's the order in your books that you've got. And I think we're gonna start with Julia.
Okay.
Will you tell us what page number it is
Yeah,
too, please?
would you?
That helps us out a great deal.
I don't believe Julia has a page number.
I'll present some information and put it on the screen so that you can refer back to that. And then I'm happy to give it to legal or disperse it out later. If you want a handout, that'd be great. So what I'd like to do tonight is I've been asked to present some compensation information based on market and then also to go over benefits information compared to our competitors. So here, April, would you mind putting on the screen to show this information for the commission, please? Thank you. So here is a historical compensation increases based on what Lincoln County has given and then what market has been given. So as you can see, 2019, we were square with market. 2020, we implemented a compensation study, and at that point, the commission decided because of the cost and the financial restrictions, we weren't going to do anything on top of the compensation study. So we were actually lagging market at that time by 1 year. The following year, we were behind market by 1%. And coming into this year, we were actually behind market by 0.75%, leaving us behind market by 4.25%. So those are where we're at right now. Now, we're in a unique situation with the labor market as it is right now, and many of our competitors are doing mid-year increases. Two of our direct competitors gave mid-year increases, one of them being Minnehaha County, who gave, in some cases, a 10% increases for some positions, depending where they were at in the matrix. In addition to that, we're also planning for next year. So to be consistent with the FOP contract, that would be a 3.25% increase, which leaves us behind market, or to be at market for next year at an increase for all staff, 17.5. Okay. This doesn't take into consideration any bonuses, any retention bonuses or recruitment bonuses given, which many of our competitors have also given over the past 6 to 8 months. Questions on that information right there? Okay, not hearing any, I'll move on to CPI, which is another factor to take into consideration. So as I'm sure you all are well aware, inflation's at an all-time high. The cost of goods and services, which is CPI, is at 8.8%. That's the highest I've seen in my HR profession. Also, recruitment challenges. I can tell you from this time, so far this year, we have received 281 applications for 17 external postings. That's down by 40% from last year at this time with the same number of postings. To add to that, when we send interview invites, we typically are at 50% of who's going to show up and or respond to the invite. So oftentimes we're left with 1 to 3 candidates for a position, which is challenging nonetheless. Next, the labor market. Right now, Lincoln County, per the Department of Labor, we have a 1.7% unemployment rate. The last number of positions I heard that were available in the Sioux Falls area was just under 30,000. If employees would like to find a new opportunity, they are able to find something, making it imperative that Lincoln County stays competitive with their wages and also their benefits. And that brings me to benefits, but I want to pause there. Do you have any questions about recruitment, labor market, any specific questions on that data?
Julia, go back to how many positions have we had open?
17.
17.
Of those 17 positions, 4 of which have had to be reposted because we were unable to fill them. The cost for time and effort and also advertisement per posting is about $5,000.
Per position.
Correct.
Do you have a number like our turnover ratio or what we have?
Sure. Currently, our turnover is 8%.
Have you tracked that to know whether that's up or down, or has that been pretty consistent?
So 2 years ago, we were at 14%. Last year, we were at 10%. This year to date, we're at 8%.
Okay.
But again, when you have 30,000 jobs available, you're 30 miles south of Sioux Falls, and most of our employees live somewhere in and around Sioux Falls. If they'd like to leave, there's opportunities. I also want to touch on the highway department. They are currently sitting 4 people short because they're unable to find quality applicants.
Julia, you said that we spend $5,000 in advertising cost and time per position?
So on average, it's $5,000, and what that includes is the individual's time, the department head, HR's time, through the interview process, the posting, and then also the advertisement, yes. So that's all encompassing.
How much of that is time versus advertising?
I would say, well, depending on the position, right? For some of our law enforcement positions, we've posted, it costs probably $5,000 to $10,000 per posting. Now, to answer your question, probably of the $5,000, $4,000 is time. Manpower.
Thank you.
Of course.
How long have we been 4 positions short in the highway department, Julia?
Oh, that's an excellent question. So for total probably a month now. We've been 3 short, I would say about 8 to 10 months.
Maybe the better question, Julia, is when's the last time we were fully staffed? In the highway department?
In the highway department, 2 years ago probably.
Are people being offered positions and not accepting them?
For that position?
Correct.
Or just in general?
For that, for the highway department?
Yes, we have, and it really comes down to compensation.
Qualifications have become more strict too, haven't they? I mean, with the drivers.
You're exactly right. So the CDL, yes, so the
Yeah.
state came out with more restrictive criteria to obtain a CDL. So if you don't have a CDL currently, it's gonna cost the county $5,000 to get that person certified to get the CDL.
Julia, would you circle back to Minnehaha County and their compensation that they did mid-year? And some of the other, I don't know, can't call them bonuses, but they,
Yep.
would you kind of run over that again, please?
Sure. So some entities, Minnehaha County gave not only an increase across the board, they also gave retention bonuses. And then also, in addition to that, other entities have done something similar to basically acknowledge staff and their hard work specifically over COVID.
Okay. So they call that a retention bonus. Do you know what, beyond that one spike of up to 10%, what kind of increase did they have? Did they have 5%, 6%? What was that?
Last year,
Yeah, this year or this year.
specifically for Minnehaha County, and this is off memory, but last year they had a 3% cost of living increase and we had a 2.5.
Yeah.
Then they have a mid-year adjustment, along with retention bonuses. And then I believe, I'm fairly confident that they're scheduled for a 5% increase for next year as well.
Okay.
So on the sheet on the screen there where it says mid-year adjustment made by direct competitor, MC 10%, is that the retention bonus or is that
No.
separate and apart from retention bonus?
That's separate and apart. So
Okay.
the 10% is 10% added, like money in your pocket right now, to your salary.
Okay.
The retention bonuses aren't included in this. I'm just bringing it up for discussion purposes. Other questions on the compensation? If not, I can move on to benefits, and then if something comes to mind, I'm happy to answer that as well. So, I just wanted to briefly touch on the benefit side of things. Recently, HR did a comprehensive review of not only our plan design, what we offer to our employees, but also the cost of the premiums. So I believe we looked at 8 to 10 different entities, their plan design, again, their premium amounts, and ultimately what it comes down to is Lincoln County offers the poorest coverage, if not the absolute poorest coverage, and offers the highest premiums. We're one of, I think, the only county that doesn't cover diagnostic testing. So put this into perspective is that employees come in, they're hearing they're behind market, right? In addition to poor benefits that are extremely expensive. This in itself is making recruitment efforts extremely challenging right now. And not only recruitment efforts, but retention efforts. So if I could give you a recommendation for benefits, something that may be more consistent with what other counties are doing is to do a 75-25 split. What that means is the county would pick up just a little bit more than what they're picking up right now.
Julia, do you have a matrix of these compare and contrast that you did?
A matrix, I don't know that I would call this a matrix. I would call this my notes. How do I do this? And it's really little because it's a lot of information. So that's why I tried to summarize the findings. And different counties take different approaches based on their culture. Some entities you'll find that employee only is covered, and then they pick up less of the family. Now that's a commission strategy, what you'd like to do going forward and what have you. But ultimately what it comes down to is our coverage is the poorest. And diagnostic is not testing, and I think we're the only one where diagnostic testing is not covered.
Do you have something, maybe not readily available, but the compare and contrast that shows what our competitors offered versus what we offer?
Yep, that is this big, long spreadsheet, and I'm happy to pass this on to legal. You lucky thing, you. So you can look at it. This is public information. These are my notes, so it's a little bit sloppy. I apologize, but you'll get the point across. You'll get the point. Questions for me? Benefits, compensation, thoughts?
Earlier, you said our turnover, or excuse me, I think you said our turnover rate is 8%, is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
And that's so far this year. Is that a projection or is that right now?
No, that is currently. Without oversharing, I can tell you, people are looking, right?
Sure.
I've fielded more complaints in the last year than I have in my 9 years here.
What, I know when you were presenting the turnover here, you had
Yeah.
said in 2020 it was
2020 was.
12% or,
I
14.
think it was
Four-
14.
and that was the whole year?
Yeah, that was the whole
Okay.
year.
Do you know where we were midpoint for those, since we're just halfway through the year?
I don't. I can sure look
Okay.
and get back to you.
I was just curious how that was tracking.
So Julia, Minnehaha County, gave retention bonuses 10%. And they had a salary in 7%, and now they're looking at 5%. So they're jacked up pretty high.
They've made some good adjustments, yes.
Was there like the retention bonuses, was there a formula that they were using, or was it just a flat amount?
That's a good question. So it's my understanding that based on how long you were there, within like the last 18 months or something, is how they paid it out. But if you were there the last 18 months, then you got the full amount, and I think that came to, I'm sorry, I don't have it, like $1,500 or something.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Julia? Go ahead.
Julia, thank you for your presentation. It's going to be hard not to have you with us.
Oh, I appreciate that.
My question's real simple, I think.
Yeah.
Is, can you tell me what is 1% of our budget in salaries, so I can extrapolate if we did a 5%, 10% adjustment to salaries, what that would be?
I can't, but I know just the gal who can.
She has it.
Sherry has it.
What was the question?
1%?
What is 1% of our salary?
So you're saying if we did an increase of 1%?
I'm not saying increase, I'm not saying, I just want to know what 1% of our salary is.
Of our current salary?
Yes. Total salary.
positions in there. Right now, it's 12,830,000.
Is our total.
Will you repeat that, please?
12,830,489.32.
And this is, sorry, is this the projected or is this our current?
Well, what it is, well, I guess I can look at what last year's was, because I have that, hold on.
What is that exactly? 1%?
1%.
Of what?
I don't know, what 1% of, I thought that's our current salary.
Okay, so currently. Okay, so currently, we have budgeted for salaries, $11,898,967.34.
One more
Sherry,
time.
can you repeat that for me, please?
11,898,967.34.
That's
For-
what we're paying now?
Yes, that's what we have budgeted now for salaries.
Budgeted for salary.
Okay, Jerry,
So,
help me.
forgive me if I may, Commissioner. So I'm, for practical purposes, simplicity, I'm gonna round it to 12 million. So every 1% represents $120,000.
Yep.
All right, that's answers my question and I can extrapolate from that.
And you said there were new positions added in. What are those new positions?
So we have, the sheriff has requested 4 positions. State's attorney requested 3 positions.
Is that on top of the 3 FTEs we approved a couple weeks ago?
It would be 2 additional. One was a vacant spot, 2 were overhires, so there would be 2 additional, so 2 additional for next year over what you approved a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Sherry, what we have is the $12 million or 11 million plus. That includes, is that the step only?
So what I did for, I'm just gonna talk really loud, sorry guys. What I did for the budget in the budget worksheets is I took the current wage plus the step plus the position request.
Oh, okay.
So that comes up with the 12,830,489.32. That's with no, let me make sure I've got that in there. Yeah, that's with no cost of living increase,
Okay.
but with the step.
Julia, could I have you come up? Unfortunately, I have another question.
Yes.
So in your position as resource director, and people are looking, is it strictly salary or are there other conditions and benefits?
Well, I think that differs for everyone, right? What they value most.
Sure.
I
But if you
think
had
for-
to chart it,
For recruitment purposes, the first thing people make sure is that they have the compensation desired. The generation now is that they would like money in their pocket ASAP. So they're more concerned with taking care of themselves and their family from a compensation perspective. The second part of this is communication and strong leadership. People want to feel secure in their position, and they want to feel valued and heard.
and that falls on myself and this board.
Well, I think it's a combination. I mean, the commission are the leaders, right? But we also have department heads, and they're leaders in their own departments, so.
Okay, thank you, Julia.
Anything else for me?
No, thank you, Julie.
Thanks.
Did you have an order for how we're gonna do this?
Well, I was gonna go first, but the microphone's dead, so it might be better if somebody that can walk up there.
Okay,
Message while the other microphone charges.
all right. Do we have any volunteers?
Not everybody all at once.
What page?
Yeah.
Alright, so for Becky's, her first page is.
I think I printed out page 13.
Yep, page 13.
13. Okay.
I did make more of a, like a breakdown of my budget that not the salaries, but the rest of it, if you would want to see it, or I can pass it to each of you. Or if you don't think you want to see it, you just want to ask the questions, that's
Yeah, do
fine.
you wanna just run us through your budget line items and what you did?
Sure. Not salaries, like what I mainly concentrated on, and that would be like the 42 other current expenses. Does that sound good? Or
Yeah.
were you wanting any questions on the salaries part as well?
Yeah, go ahead and tell us.
Okay, so first is my supplies and materials. I broke it down that that's pretty much my microfilming, postage, printer paper, break room supplies, which is our water, and then just office supplies, which comes to a total of $8,400. The next line is travel and conference, which is pretty much just going to our Southeast District meetings, workshops, and state convention, and I budgeted $875 for that. And that's pretty much just hotel, gas, and food. The next one is our training, which is just the registration fees for the workshops and the state convention. And then I put our association fees that we pay from the state in with that training. And that's for a total of, oh, I didn't put a total there in my little sheet.
Mine's showing $2,700.
$2,700.
And that's what's been spent, or right now you're at $270.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then utilities, which is pretty much just our phone, long distance, and internet, at $1,900.
Pretty bare bones budget.
Yes, which we'll get into my M&P fund, that kind of takes care of a lot of our expenses. So pretty much this is just kind of the essentials that don't have to do with really our technology and and not with anything in our vault really, and not anything with our equipment. Pretty much, like my office supplies, it's pretty much envelopes and some good pens that we use and just miscellaneous office supplies.
Do you anticipate any expenditures you need in your department that are for technology or to stay up to date or to meet the demand of the ever-increasing amount of property that's sold and transferred and stuff like that?
That pretty much, any technology-wise, that would be handled by our M&P fund, which go over, which currently there is about 150,000 in there. So, and I like to not use a ton of it just for big projects down the way, but we should be pretty set. We just received a new software just a few years back. There's always upgrades to the software, or possible things that we could get new that we could always add, and I put that in there for that. Pretty much, like my supplies in this budget really runs off of how busy of a year we are.
Okay.
The more documents we get in, the more microfilming I have to do, possibly the more things I have to mail back, the more office supplies we'll use. So the majority of this budget is things that, I try my best to rein in office supplies
Yeah.
cheap as possible. use pens I get at state convention, notepads, use scratch paper, but pretty much I'll have to spend the majority of this money I'd have to spend no matter what if we are busy. If we have a slow year, there might be a lower possibility. If we have a really busy year, I'll have to spend more money.
Okay. But basically, you have the funds to accommodate any huge expenditures.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Does anybody have any questions for Becky?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Hey, Becky. I want to kind of just roughly put this aside for right now and just talk to us about trends. What are you seeing as a trend? Is our volume stable? Is it peaks and valleys? What's it like in your office trying to handle the day-to-day operations?
It seems pretty steady, you know, day to day, depending on title companies and things that bring us documents. You know, we could be low one day and really high the next, but it seems pretty steady over the whole week or over the whole month. Obviously, we're seeing not as many refis now as what we were back in like COVID or maybe even normally, but we're seeing a lot of sales. And in this projection, I was a little worried. I'm like, are we going to crash? Is my revenue is not going to be as much the last couple of years? And it's hard because we had a huge year during COVID with the interest rates. But what I've been told by anyone I talk to is that they can't keep up and the housing market, maybe not selling, but as far as investment properties and everything, it's just going to keep going. So they make it sound like my office is not going to slow down whatsoever, and Lincoln County just keeps building. So I would recommend, I would project always getting busier every year on a normal rate.
Follow-up question, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Technology in your office, how has the implement of internet and access changed, and what would you say would be the future of title companies and stuff having more or less access without human direct contact? Is that something that do you think will become more and more common? Or are we kind of where we should be in your ideas as far as how much hands-off we should have and go versus an automated system?
I believe so. So we have e-recording now, and that's really getting bigger, and I feel like it's just going to keep getting bigger. We have one of our title companies that is doing the majority of their e-recording, their documents through e-recording, and I think that that will help, and that will hopefully help with us not having to, keep track and mail back documents. My program now does have the ability to, an extra piece, to put everything online, and that is something that I kind of hope to do in the future, especially once we get everything up to date. There is always worried. I know Minnehaha is a little worried about doing that because of protection, and all my office is open to the public. Anyone can come in, as far as the real estate records, anyone can come in and look, or they can call, and we will give them the information on the public documents we have. So the program that my software could possibly do, it would have like a membership. So you would have to pay to go on there. So someone really can't just be snooping. They could go on there depends on the thing, on what I do. It could be you get so many hours, you get like the whole day, and of course you can do like an annual membership that, maybe our attorneys and surveyors and title companies would do. And this would only have what is available to the public right now, if whether they were to come in and look at our computers and our system, or what we would send them if they asked us to send them things.
Would you need much additional hardware or software to get that implemented when it does come, if it comes?
To go online. I believe the last time, I think I checked with Jake, and I think he said, so it's a piece of our already software, just like additional, and I believe, wish I had it, I think I had it last year. There's like a one-time price, and then there's like an annual fee.
There's always maintenance. They
Yeah.
get you hooked.
So it'd probably be discussing with my title companies and my surveyors of would you use this, or would you rather not pay a fee and just email us or call us and get what you want, or come in? Because there would be, I don't want to do it over too much. I feel like it would almost be like 3 or maybe 5,000 a year. Can't remember. I had the conversation with Jake last year after I had a like a webinar with Tyler Technologies, the program designers, talking about it. I believe it was maybe like $8,000 to get it up and running, and then an annual fee. So it would just be whether we would make enough revenue to cover that,
Sure.
or if we wanted to do that so that it was open to the public. Because we do get a lot of from out-of-state people wondering why our documents aren't online. And
Okay. So, but you don't have an idea that you're gonna try to implement that this next year at all?
no, I would like to get my, we just got this current software where we were not able to put legal descriptions or things in, and I'd like to get that more up to date. I would hate for people to pay possibly for a service that's only partially done, which I always could, and make the payment smaller, and as we get more information on there, make it bigger. That's always a possibility.
Very good. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Thank you, Becky.
Yes, do we want to go through my M&P fund as well
Sure.
as I'm up here? I think that is page 61, if I printed out the right page. I don't know if anyone needs like kind of an overview of what it is or where it comes from, that this is completely separate from the general budget. And this comes from money that we get, a portion of the recordings. Anyone need more information on that?
The only thing I have, Madam Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
Is there a maximum amount of funds that you can accrue before, there's anyone looking at going, why are you accumulating and not spending it?
No, not that I know of. As far as the law states that it cannot be touched. Except for myself or my office.
Anybody have any other questions about that?
And those prices that I gave for going online, that would be all out of this budget. That would not come out of the general budget. That would come out of my M&P fund. And I can go through kind of, I have a little bit of a breakdown. Well, it's not so much a breakdown, just more maybe explaining the lines. Maybe more of a breakdown of my software and equipment. I go through, I do this budget a little bit different than my general budget, just because, whatever I don't spend stays in there. So sometimes I budgeted for each, like a label printer and a receipt printer and a scanner. Just, I believe some of these things we're looking at replacing one this next year, but it's more if one were to need to be rebought because it goes down.
In your capital outlay line items, you had 40,000 and change for software and equipment, and to date you've spent about 9,400. Are there big purchases you're going to make here in the second half of the year?
I was hoping, some things have come in front of it, that one of my projects would be to start scanning in our old microfilm and our old books to at least do $20,000 this year. Some things have come in front of it, and of course I can still do that this year. But that is one thing that I'm hoping to do, is get some of it would be rescanned to get better images, and then some of the things haven't been scanned yet. So that would be one of them.
Do you pay an outside service provider or outside vendor to do that for you?
Yes, we would pay a company to digitally scan everything, and then possibility of paying our recording software to put it all into the system, or if we decide it's better for us to kind of do it one by one. But that would, yes, all come out of the, this fund.
Any other questions? Anything else you'd like us to know about it, Becky?
I don't think so, as long as it all sounds good to everyone.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Thank you, Becky. Thank you.
She's on page 12.
Thank you. Can you
Good
move that-
evening.
Can you move that remote?
I have some notes there. I was trying to cover it up. but
Were you
that's
hiding
okay.
them?
That's okay. They were just some comparisons. Carla Gosen, Director of Equalization. Outside of the salaries, my 2023 proposed expenses for the equalization budgets has seen very minimal changes. Most of the line items have remained the same, but a few have seen a slight increase or decrease, and we can go one by one. The insurance that we pay, I think that has stayed the same. That's based on a 3-year average. Interest on abatements, very little activity throughout the year. What that line item is if we have an abatement that has accrued some interest and penalties, that comes out of my budget. I think last year we spent $7 and some odd cents out of that. That's remained pretty stable. The professional fees, which is our qualified pre-sort mailing of assessment notices. I did slightly increase that by $1,000, not knowing what the postage is going to be for 2023. I took the amount of growth parcels that we had for the 22 assessment year and took that times our postage rate of 55 cents just to come up with something. Every year we have a growth in our parcel count, therefore we have to send additional assessment notices each year. I believe we gained 1,200 parcels for the 22 assessment year compared to the 21 assessment year. Publishing, this is the publishing of our exempt notices. Again, I took a 3-year average and kept our publishings the same. Repairs and maintenance, I looked at this prior to the meeting and I'm like, ooh, I wonder if I should not have decreased it because since I put this together for you, we've had 2 chip repairs that we needed done on the cars. So we're in our rural areas, so we're getting a lot of chips in our windows and they're needing repairs. So that's just continual maintenance on the cars, oil changes, chip repairs. We've had some dogs that have viciously attacked our cars, so we have a lot of scratch marks, so we try to get those buffed out.
Sheriff, can we help out on that?
These next few items, this is a new breakdown that we put together for you for 2021. I had it all lump sum in our supplies and materials. We have now broke it down into supplies and materials, the training, the travel. I think that's been the same, but we broke it down into 3 parts just to see how much money we're spending for our certification for our assessors. I did have a slight increase in our certification and training for 2022 versus 23, and that's because of our certification requirements. We've missed out on the last couple years. 2020, our certification almost was at a standstill. 2021, at the very end, our South Dakota annual school, 2 of the classes got postponed or delayed or canceled. Therefore, staff is needing that continuous certification, so I increased it by $1,800. Our travel to these conferences and workshops, I did decrease for the 2023 year, and that's because our annual conference is in Sioux Falls, so lodging and travel will be at a minimum. Utilities, there's our cell phone. I did decrease that, and that was because of the average, the 3-year average. That's all I have for our expenses. Do you have any questions? I do have some stats that I put together that's from our office.
Good.
Reporting has changed slightly, but I am confident in these numbers. So right now, our 2021 property transfers are down about 3%. So you can see at this time last year, we had, there was 1,425 property transfers. This year, we're at 1,375, so about 50, but that resulted in a 3% decrease. But you can see we're still up in the 3-year average. Last year in 2021 versus 20, we were up 27%. 19 to 20, we were up 10%. Our building permits are up 11%, which we were up 32% last year and 15% the year before when you compared the years. So we're continually seeing a increase in building permits. Our plats or parcels, estimated, they're down about 9%. I kind of took a side glance at that. The only thing I can think of that's resulting in a 9% is because some of the municipalities have changed their platting regulations. I think they've increased fees, so therefore they're platting more parcels in one plat. Before they would plat maybe 1 to 5 lots. Now they're platting the first phase of their addition. So I think that's why that number is different compared to previous years. You can see in this should have been 20. In 19 to 20, we saw a 22% increase. 20 to 21, we saw a 30%, and now we're seeing this slight decrease. And I think it's the platting fees and how they're platting their developments. But annexations are up for this year. I don't have how many annexations were last year, how many annexations we have this year, but I can tell you that the amount of annexations that I have been reviewing this year, it feels like there's more. And it's larger pieces, more properties being annexed into the city limits. I think Becky could probably, you probably feel the same way in regards to the annexations.
Yep, especially.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything else, Carla?
I think that's it, if you have any questions.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions? Guess not.
Okay, very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
Debbie's budget's on page 8.
Hi,
Hi.
mine is, I didn't increase hardly anything. My publishing, I increased a little bit, and that's just anticipating,
What page?
no,
Eight?
Page 8?
page 8. Advertising of taxes or whatever. That's basically it. I only basically increased only $1,000 over last year, so kind of cut and dry.
Does anybody have any questions for Debbie?
Becky, I see in Minnehaha.
Debbie,
Sorry,
that's right.
I was looking at her.
You were looking at Becky, I see.
In the Minnehaha County Courthouse, they have this big yellow vending machine that gives out the, what is it, the registration
Yes,
tags and
yes.
license plates.
And I have asked the state if we could possibly get one here, and they don't have any extra machines right now. So they know that I have asked, so if they ever get one, we can possibly have one here. That way, people could just come instead of standing in line there at our windows, they could stand in line at that way machine. But it's a possibility, you know, to help with the lines and stuff like that.
So we're on the list.
We're on a list. Yes, I brought that up last year to them.
Is there a charge to us for that, or is that paid for by the state?
You know, I'm not real sure how that would go. I think it's paid for by the state because they want to promote them. And they want them, have them, you know, I know Minnehaha County has them, but they'd like to have them in places that are open 24 hours so that people can access them anytime. And there's like a number on them. If something goes wrong with it, they call that number and they help them with the whatever problem.
Now, I've heard people make some statements just in public. We don't currently have any of those machines servicing Lincoln County, do we? Or do we?
You
Well,
can,
not in actual Lincoln County, I don't think we do. There's
I don't think so.
2 or 3 of them there's 3 of them in Minnehaha County.
Right, there's like one in a Hy-Vee. I
Hy-Vee
think, or
and
maybe
one
two.
one at the Get and Go in front of Menards on the east side, and then the one in the courthouse.
And you can, like, if I was, you know, hanging out up in Sioux Falls and didn't want to drive down here,
Right.
or even if I was
If you
here
were
from
coming,
Rapid City.
right, and you
I could
forgot to
use
renew
that,
your
right?
tags and you remembered when you got here, anybody can renew from any county.
Okay,
That's the nice thing about those.
yeah,
You know, you don't have to go to the county that you reside in.
okay.
I have actually used them. They're a very useful tool, especially when at midnight when I've forgotten to get them.
Forgotten, yeah.
I don't want to go driving past this deputy and go get to
Well,
know
so
him very
I'm
well.
on my way, I got it.
But there are circumstances they still cannot, at least not yet, replace our office. There's not the title transfers, but there's, in commercial vehicles, for instance, there's a lot of things that they cannot accommodate for unless you have a whole file of paperwork with you.
Yeah, you know, the commercial, even, you know, for the renewal notices that they send out, the commercial ones, they use their FEIN number, so they sent them out a actual letter form instead of the postcard form. So,
Yeah, you must have that, which has a number on it.
On
Then
it.
you punch that in
Right.
with your EI.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have
so
that.
eventually, I think they want to get it where they're a little bit more friendly on all of that aspects, but, you know, it's in the works, I think.
All of my vehicles are registered now properly, thank you,
Good to hear.
I think.
Anybody have any other questions for Debbie?
Were you needing any kind of increase in funds for technology or anything like that? You know, maybe additional
Well,
screens or?
Right now, Jake has some screens, and I've ordered the arms so that they can be on one arm, because we need them up off the desk, because the girls use the whole desk. So I have some arms ordered, but he does have, because I want to have dual screens at all the windows. That way, it's easier, they don't have to flip screens all the time for taxes and motor V that can have one up for either or.
And is that coming out of Jake's budget, or does that come out of your
I believe
budget?
the computer screens themselves come out of Jake's, but the arms are coming out of mine.
Okay. And then, did you ever, yeah, I remember we had some discussion a number of months or maybe a year ago about the, this special printer that the state authorizes or issues to your office?
For our decals,
Yes.
yes, we have 4 sets of those. I have not gotten more. I've talked to them about that, but it's just, I don't know, like pulling teeth. I don't know why they didn't want to give me more, but
Is that not really per se a budget issue or a cost issue, but it's more of like the state is not pushing the machinery down to
I
you?
think it's the state. I don't think it's a budget thing. I think it's just that they, I'm not even sure how many that Minnehaha has. If they have one at every window, they might. But, some of the other counties that are even smaller than us maybe only have 2.
Right.
We have 4. Some of them might only have 1, depending on how big their county is. But yeah, I would like to have, at least 1 more set. I think it would be helpful, then the girls wouldn't have to run back and forth, because, I have them in between the desks, so a couple of them share the same machine, and if they're printing out, they're both printing out, their customers' tags might be in between each other's, so they have to really look at them, make sure they give the right
Debbie, I
tags to
have
the
a
right ones.
question. Under charges for goods and services, help me understand, we have reassignment, license plate, and that's always stays 28,000 over the years, and we're back to 20. What does that entail?
Reassignment fees, that's, where people keep your plate,
Yeah?
and, I buy a new vehicle and you wanna keep that plate, cause you've already paid for the license fees on it, so that's a $5 reassignment fee that
So that pretty
evidently.
well just stays the same, that doesn't change
I,
much.
I just haven't, I guess it never changed it. Looks like I lowered it by 700. Probably shouldn't have, but
And our title fees, now, that shows an increase, I mean, with the population and all of that, are we seeing a steady increase in that one?
oh, yeah, and, yeah, I probably should have gotten a little bit better at that. But for like the other treasure fees, that's where we're charging that extra $25 for out-of-state titles. We've brought in like $7,300 so far since September, which is not a whole lot, but it's better
Well,
than
something,
it's something, yeah.
$7,300, yeah.
So,
Okay. Are you seeing an increase in the number of people that use postage to get their license?
we don't, we get a lot of mail-in, but I think a lot of people are utilizing those self-serve terminals really a lot more. And then the state mails those out, those tags. So, but we, yeah, people, and next year we're gonna be issuing new plates, so we're gonna be, mailing out actual plates instead of just decals.
Okay.
You mean the state is doing a redesign on the license plate?
Redesign, yep,
Okay.
yep.
Any other questions? Anything else you want us to know, Debbie?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. One more old license plate I'll have to nail up in the old garage.
We got a few of them. What page? 60.
60?
Good evening, Sheriff.
Steve Swenson, Lincoln County Sheriff. All right, I'll start out with the least, most painful one here, with this 24/7 sobriety fund. There's not much on here other than wages. some minor supplies, travel and training. Pretty it's
60? Did you-
nearly self-funded.
60,
Page 60.
60.
We're on 24/7. I was looking for the different one.
60.
Not expecting to see much of a change there.
No,
Are
Okay.
those testing fees set by your office or by the court?
they're set by the state, 24/7 program.
Okay, so we have no discretion in terms of increasing the fee that we would charge people who, get a DUI.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, that's set by the state, and then, of course, the judges sentence them to the program. And down here, we only allow remote breath or scram. We don't do the daily PBTs, because it would require us to staff that on weekends, and we'd be way upside down.
Are those fees keeping up with your cost?
We're about, for next year, last year, we're negative $3,700. So budgeted with the estimate revenue of 75,000 will be negative 13,000.
Is the court allowed to, as a condition, impose those additional costs on these people?
Not to
That
my
we can
knowledge.
make that
I don't
up?
believe so. I believe it's all set by the state program, the Attorney General's office.
So we're stuck.
Correct. If we want to participate in the program.
Correct, right.
How often do they test then?
If it's remote breath, which is a breathalyzer that basically takes your picture when you test on, they do that twice a day. Scram bracelet tests you 24 hours a day. But it isn't, both of those don't require personnel, so they're. And the flip side, which you're not gonna see in this, is the $13,000, that we are keeping people out of jail with this program, so it's probably a plus program. All right, now 911 communications.
Page 53.
What was that, Madam Auditor?
53.
Thank you.
Sheriff, before you start, are we fully staffed down there now?
Yes,
Thank you.
since yesterday. Okay, on 911, again, mostly wages. Our revenues are gonna be up because of the contracts that we've signed with the cities last year. The bigger expenses would be fees and contracts. That would be our CAD system, which is shared between dispatch, the jail, and the sheriff's office. Repairs and maintenance, that's gonna fluctuate a little bit. We did lose a tower in the winds. Todd Baldwin has been working with a landowner and two-way, and I think we're gonna get a pretty fair deal, if not get that at no cost to the county to put up the tower down south. So those are just the typical annual costs for maintaining our towers and our equipment. There's another one.
I remember we had a discussion 2 years ago about equipment upgrade. We didn't do it because we didn't get the money from we wanted to use some COVID monies for that, right?
Yes, did end up getting it all done.
We did?
Yes.
Okay.
With the money that we were reimbursed through COVID for 911 wages, et cetera, had to be used in that 911. It wasn't put into the general fund. So, pretty sure that was under Marlene, but anyway, it was covered under, so we have all new radios, all new consoles with another grant from the state, but all that equipment, except for we have a couple, hard to explain, but there's a couple radio stacks that we need to replace that aren't P25 compliant, which is just the new radio system that will go in effect later this year or the first part of next year. And those run about $3,500 a piece, and I think we're 2 or 3, but hopefully those are actually covered by Homeland Security as well. So we're 911 is sitting state-of-the-art equipment. It's sitting very good.
Anybody have any questions about the 911?
So, Steve, our capital outlay is certainly down. You know, you're at 24,000.
Oh, yeah, and that's probably pretty strong, to be honest with you. I think I could probably cut that in half, to be honest with you, with
we
where we're at.
Showed progress there.
Right,
Congratulations.
thank you. Now the jail. Now, this is work in progress here. We're cutting the auditor asked me to cut actually, I don't know that she asked me. We cut the jail out of the sheriff's budget to its own budget to better track our prisoner courthouse and jail costs. So this is a new budget on its own this year. The big thing, obviously, is gonna be the prisoner care is 2.2 million. That's $30,000 less than I budgeted last year. Our numbers have remained pretty steady from last year to this year. Hoping that remains the same. However, our per diem is going up January 1st will be $106.20 per day per inmate. So that might be, and I was just notified of this last week, so this number was prior to that. So that's gonna be a pretty tight number and a number that would have no control over. Then there's a vehicle in here. We do need to replace one of the transport vans, hopefully next year. And I'll get into that on the sheriff's side of it as well. We're having trouble getting vehicles, so we have 2 that we ordered last year that we still don't have, and I'm not even certain we will get them.
So Steve, on the sheriff's prisoner care, the 2.2, is that with the 106 or without?
That is without.
Okay, so that's gonna go up. Do you know how much it'll go up?
Well, like I said,
I mean,
we've dipped, so we were up around 65, 70 inmates towards the end of last year, and we're at 46 or 47 today. We're at 43 yesterday. So it's a guessing game. If I'm just guessing, to be honest with you, it's 52 inmates is what I'm estimating as an average. I do believe they're gonna take the minimum of 45 off the contract. So the first time we've dipped under 45 in the since COVID would be 2 days ago. And why that happened, our calls for service are up, but our inmates are down. I think the judges are doing a good job of managing that as well.
And you said 106.20 or 106.40?
$106.20.
Thank you.
So just rough numbers, of course, but 106 minus 95, what is that, $11 per day times, if we just took 52 times 365, we're looking, what, very rough, of course, a swag.
$500 a day.
Okay, so the 200 grand, another 200 grand,
Right.
is that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing some of the number is about 208, 209. Yep.
Yeah.
Prisoner medical or prisoner mental health costs, is that included in medical costs then, or is that something separate?
I don't believe we pay anything for mental health as far as through the sheriff's office. I don't know if the county does I think there is another mental health fund, but that's not in part of my budget. The medical costs on the inmate or the jail budget would be any medical bills, like if they're transported to the hospital or the medical treatment they get in the jail, prescriptions. And that's a hit or miss too.
Okay, thank you.
Sheriffs?
Page 20.
Okay, on the big changes on this would be the Harrisburg contract. We have not signed the contract, but we've verbally agreed to increase the contract from, shows 383 for this year. However, it's 424, I believe, is what the correct number would have been. Anyway, that will be $900,014 next year. And simply Harrisburg has outgrown the hourly rate for police service. They need full-time police, and that requires more than one officer. And they're totally on board with that. So, but in exchange for that, the money, that's where the 4 positions come into play. So we're gonna absorb that in wages if we're allowed the FTEs. Requesting 5 vehicles for next year. We're putting about 500,000 miles annually on for all the vehicles within the agency. About 387,000 of that is patrol miles. So if we're trying to keep our cars under 100,000, which was my goal, get rid of them at 100,000 because they start costing a lot of money to maintain. We currently have a vehicle at 144,000, one at 181,000, which if we get our 2 vehicles this year that we ordered last year, that one with 181,000 is part of that, so that would be surplus. Then we have a 2019 at 118,000 miles, a 2019 car at 117,000. So by the time we get new cars in, get them built, get them on the road, these will have 150,000 miles on them. So we're sitting at 6 vehicles with the lowest mileage of those 6 is 94,000.
How many do you put on a year, did you say, Steve?
Patrol, just for the patrol deputies, was averaged, and I didn't bring the number, but it was 387,000, I believe. And that's been pretty steady for the last 3 years.
So
Could
you're
you-
asking for 4, you said?
It'd be 5 patrol vehicles and then 1 jail vehicle, which would be a van. So 6 total with the 4 budgets.
If he put in the request today, he probably wouldn't get half of them.
I ordered the vehicles last year in October, and we've received 4 of 6.
Yeah, I went shopping the other day for a vehicle for the store, and, yeah, they couldn't tell you if he'd get it in a year.
Somebody told me that Ford has asked people to stop calling, looking for their cars, so.
Sheriff, what was the number for the new contract with Harrisburg?
$900,014. And then there would be a 3% increase for each year for the next 3 years.
Has any other community ever approached you about services? Similar to what we do in Harrisburg?
No. I take that back. Hudson.
Is that an ongoing conversation with them?
We actually just started to have the conversation again last week, and they want more of a ordinance, somebody to work with their city ordinances. So it's gonna be difficult.
Code enforcement,
Yeah.
Correct.
did you refer them over to Toby?
I'm having a- Yeah, I'm sending Carla down there.
But just one last thing on it, and to just kind of give you, everybody an idea where things have gone. 2018, our calls for service were 7,900. Last year, there were 16,000. So part of that is you guys have been generous to properly staff the sheriff's office. Those calls were probably, a lot of those were priority there, but things are not slowing down, so.
What was 2018, Steve?
7,900.
70.
Your counterparts throughout the state, or at least in the southeast, seeing the same thing? Do you know?
I don't know. And again, I think it's totally on how you're staffed. Because if you're understaffed, you're gonna, your calls for service are gonna reflect that because you don't have the people to take the calls.
Response time is way down.
Correct.
Anybody have any questions?
Oh, yes, I have one question.
Go ahead.
Where are we at in the contract with the officers? Are we second year of 3 or third year?
This, I believe there's 1 year after this year.
This is
This was just the
This is the second year, I believe. I will, just to touch on what Julie was touching on, the competition has become real. The Minnehaha County's changes to their salaries, their COs, which would be their jailers, corrections officers, and I'm just gonna give you rough numbers, but it's 23 to 26 starting. That's where our deputies are. Their deputies are 26 to 29 starting. So the problem we're running into is we're $6,000 to $12,000 behind in wages. And then our benefits are awful. Our insurance is expensive and it doesn't cover anything. So that's people are starting to see that. I don't know if the rumor is we have 6 or 7 deputies looking for work with better benefits. Our pay was getting pretty close. Minnehaha County's big jump here is gonna make it pretty difficult. We advertised for the 3 deputy positions. I wanna say we spent $7,500 on advertisement, just advertisement, and we interviewed 6, Julia's gone, 6 deputies, 6 people for deputy positions, and we're hoping to get 1 out of there. So it's, we're spending the money, and we're offering a $7,500 hiring bonus, so I would agree that the wages is gonna be a real issue after what happened up north.
Anybody else?
I have a question. I was gonna wait until the end, but
Go ahead.
that kinda led into it. We have several department heads here. Who needs help now? I mean, we can't wait until this budget's passed, even if we were to give a substantial adjustment to salaries for next year. Given what's happened, how many of you need help now? I mean, yes, you're full, but how many of you think there's people that are looking and you're at risk of losing people? Sheriff, I know you've already said it. I mean, when you've got a 12% differential immediately right now, and that's not even talking about the healthcare and those types of benefits.
Yeah, our health insurance is costing us a couple dollars an hour. That's what it costs me, is $2 an hour annually.
And it doesn't cover anything.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
just-
think we have
just
the option
premium.
of waiting, board members. I think we need to lead and unfortunately, we're reacting, but we're reacting and we're trying to sustain what we have. It costs more to replace people, especially good quality people. I think we need to take action as quick as possible to address this matter, so.
As a follow-up question, just because we digressed, Tom, how tough is it to recruit? What's that?
Mike's not.
Talk into your microphone.
Excuse me. Tom, how tough is it to recruit somebody for the state's attorney's office?
We've, as Julian mentioned, we've had applicants for our positions continue to go down over the last year or so. So it's getting more difficult to recruit for.
Tom, is your microphone on?
No. No.
Do you can,
I'll just come up.
yeah, do you want to come up and,
Budget time anyway.
Thank you, Commissioner Schmidt. Tom Woolman, State's Attorney. Just to answer that question quick, it's becoming more difficult to recruit. We haven't had any open positions now for a little while, but our applicant numbers were really tapering off. And as as Julia pointed out, it's a benefits issue. It's a bit of a salary issue as well, and that's just becoming more and more of a gap.
Well, not only that, Tom, not everybody will live in Canton, South Dakota. They'll live in most likely Sioux Falls or some area.
Right, that's
And transportation, gas costs going up and
about
everything else.
about $5,000 a year to drive back and forth to Canton from Sioux
Yeah.
Falls.
Tom, you spoke of recruiting. I'm talking about retaining who you have.
Well, I'll get to that.
What,
Without any further ado, I believe I'm on page 10.
10?
And
Okay.
thank you to the chair and to the board for coming together tonight to discuss this. This has been an interesting study over the years, and what an interesting problem to have with our huge growth over the last 22 years. We've gone from 24,000 people to 68,000 people, and our commissioners continue to be called upon to be true students of the craft and to study what needs to be done to address as leaders, not necessarily the wants of our employees, but the true needs of what our employees are. And so that's what you're called upon, I think, to separate through here as we continue to expand as a population, and as we continue to have to be able to provide support and services and infrastructure to that ever-growing public with a very limited funding source. So without any further ado, as you break down through my personal services, if you go beneath that and other current expenditures, we're asking for some nominal increases in fees and contracts, and that's going to be things such as blood draws, costs of prosecution, our Westlaw contract for legal research, our expert witness fees, and professional fees. We're asking for a $5,000 increase there based upon the number of trials that we've been having and what we've been called upon to enter into with expert witnesses for testimony, et cetera, and with our potential upcoming homicide case involving the Bedouin matter. So that's what the increase is there for. Moving down in rentals, that's remained the same. Supplies and materials remaining the same. Travel and conference remaining the same. And then on that final line item, the utilities, we're moving that back to the number that it was at back in 2021. We'd moved that down, I think. I don't remember exactly why, Sherry, but
From 2021?
yeah, for our utilities, we'd moved that down. I don't recall why, but I think we're on track to spend the 35, so that's what we're going to request there. So then moving back up to professional services, salaries and wages, and the sort of the needs that we feel that we have in the office based upon Sheriff Swenson's continuing staff increases, which we believe are important for community safety and community protection. I believe that he is on track to add 5 deputies, already has those 3 approved. And of course, that increases our caseload right down the line from support services with personnel in the office, victim witness assistants, paralegals, and attorneys. And those are our three requests for 2023, would be an additional attorney. Currently, our magistrate attorneys are on track to handle about 1,400 magistrate files this year, so roughly 700 apiece. Those two attorneys are also called upon in the office to do other things, to be backup for juvenile court, for circuit court, and for A&N or abuse and neglect actions as well. So they're wearing a lot of hats and juggling a lot of files. And we would ask for an additional magistrate attorney position based upon those increasing numbers. Additionally, we're asking for a victim witness assistant. Currently, the office has one victim witness assistant. She predominantly works with our victims of felony crimes in the office and other serious matters. We have a paralegal that currently sort of wears two hats and then works with our victims on the magistrate or misdemeanor offenses. So we definitely have a need there in providing assistance to our victims as they navigate the system. And then one additional position would be and this is a brand new position, but it's a digital evidence coordinator. More and more, our law enforcement continues to add more and more videos as they investigate crimes, whether that be body cameras, in-car cameras, footage from convenience stores, footage from doorbell cameras, from home security cameras, from the last big one that we had last week was presenting to defense counsel his own client's dash camera, which you'd think this little box that you put on the dash of your car to record the events of the day as you drive around wouldn't be that big of a deal, but it ended up being almost a terabyte worth of data. And so he had to bring an external hard drive, and we load that onto our system and load it onto his system. And it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of storage, and as a result of that, we've just been answering that by having our legal office assistants and some of our paralegals to tackle some of these chores throughout the day, hopefully being able to run it in the background of their systems as they copy that digital evidence and then upload it, preserve it, and then disseminate it to defense counsel. But it's really become so taxing upon that staff that we feel like we really need to designate somebody with that exclusive job description. Sheriff Swenson is about to go live with his body cameras, which is the arbitrator system. GTAC system. I think that Sioux Falls PD has GTAC or arbitrator.
I have GTAC.
So the GTAC system is the body camera, which syncs with the in-car camera, but the in-car camera has a front-mounted, then a front seat, or front-mounted to look in front of the vehicle, a front seat camera, and then a back seat camera as well. So that's 4 videos, and they're all rolling. So when somebody gets pulled over for a DWI outside of Beersford in the county at 2 a.m, that arrest and subsequent video that's generated from that will be 4 separate video files, all lasting about 2 hours by the time the deputies completed checking them into jail or booking them into jail. So that's a tremendous amount of data. Jake Oak, our IT director and his department has done a great job of figuring out how to manage that data on the sheriff's office side. And he's still working with us to make sure that we have enough storage to keep up with that need as well. Sioux Falls Police Department already has that system in place, and it is taking us a tremendous amount of time from our paralegals and our legal office assistants. Our investigator travels around with a hard drive to go dump these video files and collect them from the Sioux Falls Police Department when necessary. So, but those are the 3 positions that we have. Our case numbers are a little bit above where they were last year, but last year was fairly horrendous in that we were up 25% in our felony filings, which, coming on the heels of COVID and everything else, the office just hasn't had a chance to really catch a breath. It feels like we're just constantly going. And I would say that, on the whole, I think that the morale of the troops is good. But I would be remiss not to mention that I've literally had personnel in tears as it relates to our insurance coverage. It is not good coverage, and it costs a fortune for some of these, some of our staff and our attorneys to be able to utilize that coverage. It's not good. So that is definitely a blast to the morale of the troops. And I would certainly ask for your consideration there, as well as these salary considerations moving forward into this budget process. So any questions at all about?
Anybody have any questions?
I have a question that's not directly related to budget, though.
Go ahead.
Tom, explain something to me. Sheriff Swenson had indicated that the judges are doing a good job. You're doing a good job in your office, I'm assuming.
We definitely keep track of who's in custody. We make our bond recommendations based upon our review of the evidence that we have, of the criminal charges that we have in place, the defendant's criminal history, whether or not, and ultimately whether or not that defendant presents as a risk to the community for continued harm or danger to the community, and then whether or not that defendant presents as a flight risk.
Our case numbers are skyrocketing.
Yeah, I mean, they're moderately up from last year, but last year was such a significant increase. The other thing is that we forfeit bonds. I mean, well, we as a matter of the statute, when bonds are violated, we forfeit the bonds and we go make sure that those are collected. And I think that we don't have much by way of outstanding dollars as it relates to those forfeited bonds. We've got some cleanup work to do, but I think over the last probably month, we've forfeited, I think today, there was a $50,000 cash bond that was forfeited. Now, whether or not that'll be set aside, I don't know, but I think there was another bond in the amount of $15,000 that was forfeited as well. So I don't get to talk about a lot of revenues in my office, but ultimately, the judges place those individuals out on bond after assessing those risks, those two things, whether or not they're a flight risk or a danger to the community. So I think that, preliminarily, we're doing a good job of not recommending excessive bonds. We're taking a very studied approach as to how to assess those, and then the court is doing the same thing on her end.
Tom?
If I could
Oh.
follow up, yeah. Thank you. That's what I'm trying to understand. Our caseloads are up, you're doing a good job. I'm assuming the percentage of increases are kind of across the board, petty to pretty severe. I know here a year ago, we had 5 murder trials, which was pretty substantial. But our numbers are down in incarceration.
Correct.
Do you think we are doing a good job of incarcerating those that need to be incarcerated, or are we getting hindered by the fact we don't have our own facility, the costs are through the roof, our budgets are tight, and the judges know it, and they are helping the taxpayers in not hitting their budget, but yet maybe not? And if you don't feel comfortable answering it, I totally understand, but something doesn't add up to me.
I think that the slight downturn in incarceration rates that Sheriff Swenson mentioned was a little bit of an anomaly. I think that we've been fairly consistent this year with the jail numbers. But overall, I believe that the courts do an appropriate job of assessing bonds and making sure that we don't have people in custody that don't need to be in custody. We've got the pretrial services program that does their own assessment, provides that to the court and to the state, and managing folks that are out on bond then with either daily phone check-ins or weekly phone check-ins, et cetera. So that's a service that we utilize as well. I think that the commission has heard from and I think funded that again this year, I believe so. But that's a system that's utilized by the court as well.
Do you track repeat offenders? Is that number changing? Is it?
The recidivism rates? It's tough on our level to do that. We could. We certainly have some frequent flyers that we recognize. But the recidivism rate within our numbers, it would be difficult to track. I think you'd need to go statewide for that.
Do you have a pulse on the community? Does the community any blowback for your office because people are getting bonded out? and maybe the public feels that
Oh.
they should be incarcerated?
Yeah, I could give you all kinds of examples where my lead victim witness assistant or my legal assistants are taking flack from very angry people where bonds have been afforded. That just happened last week where I think 2 of my staff members were yelled at and swore at by an angry customer, I guess I would call them, whose daughter was a victim. And I can't disagree that with him for being angry. But just the same, ultimately it's the court's determination as to what the appropriate bond is. And we make recommendations based upon what we see and what we believe is appropriate under the circumstances. So, but yeah, I think that there are some folks, victims are never going to be, victims never are made whole. And as we go through this process, I think that we certainly hear a lot about that, whether that be in how the courts are sentencing, or, how restitution is handled, et cetera. So we're doing our best, but I think that the community that we're in today, or the culture maybe that we're in today, is different than it was 5 years ago. So
Thank you.
we could talk a long time about that, of
Sure.
course, but yes.
Thank you, Tom, for that.
Following up on Commissioner Poppins, Sheriff Milstead gave an interview with the Argus Leader last week, and it was about the jail issue. And he said, we see a lot of frequent flyers, we see a lot of repeat offenders in here. I don't know how he's tracking it. Sounds like you're not tracking it necessarily. What I'm trying to figure out is, does it go towards the issue of we don't have tough enough sentencing, and so we're not properly rehabilitating these people, and it's resulting in repeat offenders coming back? Number one. Number two, what is the interplay of presumptive probation and the cost shifting that incurred as a result of shifting those people from having tougher sentences, i.e. going to prison, as opposed to sitting in jail, or now receiving presumptive probation, and perhaps they sit in our county jail system longer, or maybe not as long, but they come back on more frequent trips. Can you speak to how all that interplay works?
Okay, I'll try my best. As it relates to the Sheriff Milstead's interview with the Argus, and I didn't get a chance to review that, but Minnehaha County, and in particular the city of Sioux Falls, is quite a bit different across 57th Street and as you go into the downtown area. I've got 3 deputies in the office that used to work with Minnehaha County, and it's interesting to watch the news over the noon hour with them in our break room, because they'll identify those frequent flyers that are seen in Minnehaha County with great regularity. And I don't want to single out that particular population, but it's a little easier to track just because of the volume up there. We certainly could track it. I don't know, and maybe I will following this, but I don't know that it would be hugely beneficial to us. But I could certainly bring you the numbers. And then, as it relates to presumptive probation, I would say that in the Second Circuit, prior to 2012 and the Senate Bill 70 implementation, I think the circuit judges were already practicing presumptive probation. We were not sending people to the penitentiary for DWI thirds, class 6 and class 5 felonies. That was very rare. That those individuals committing those infractions were going to the penitentiary. In meth cases, those class 5 felony controlled substance cases were rarely going to the penitentiary, absent some significant history or absent some aggravating factors. So I think that I don't think that it had as big of an impact on our community as in 2012 when the P2P method of cooking methamphetamine came on the scene from the Mexican cartels. And that in conjunction with maybe the Senate Bill 70 and the presumptive probation, I think that really skyrocketed our numbers. And that cheap methamphetamine has really driven a lot of our crime. My service organization speech from 2005 was a lot about the perils of alcohol and how alcohol was driving 80 to 90% of our crime. And now today, it's almost exclusively methamphetamine, and now there's more of a component in our community here in Lincoln County of fentanyl and a little bit of heroin as well. So it's just really changed who we're dealing with in terms of a customer. It's that addicted offender, and the generating a ton of thefts, whether it's storage units, catalytic converters, garage hopping, things like that. A lot of those crimes are either committed, the garage hopping is usually kids, or oftentimes kids, but those storage unit thefts and rural burglaries oftentimes is committed by addicted offenders, and methamphetamine is driving that.
Do we need, I've talked to a couple different state legislators about this, about potentially this bill coming forward in terms of offsetting county law enforcement cost, i.e., state's attorney and public defender and sheriff's office. But is there, if you want to opine, or even if you don't, that's fine, but I'm trying to get some insight into this in terms of cost recovery. Is there wisdom in assessing, first, DUI offenders with some kind of cost recovery fee for law enforcement cost, above and beyond what's already charged? That would go back to the county, not to the courts or to the school district or to UJS. I mean, a fee that would go back to the county.
I think that there would definitely be some merit to that. Sort of the user fee that the state, so the state has a $50 DWI fee currently. If the counties were to see some of that, certainly that would help to offset some of what we're doing here, because public safety, just second to our highway budget, of course, is the biggest line items in our budget.
Now, when it comes to, so we got the DUI folks there, but when it comes to the issue of those who are addicted or those who are using, fentanyl, meth, the biggest bulk of what we see in terms of that criminal component you were talking about, it's a different kind of crime. It's perhaps a different type of person in society, but is there wisdom to attaching a law enforcement cost recovery fee to people, who are charged, convicted of drug abuse crimes?
I think that becomes a little more difficult to collect from those folks who are oftentimes quite indigent as a result of their addictions. Anything to offset, I think, would help, because we're so limited in the revenues that we have here. And of course, the burdens that are placed upon us by, somewhat presumptive probation. But I don't think, in particular, our jail sentences are mostly electronic monitoring sentences at this point. And those individuals that are locked up pretrial, who sit through disposition, whether that's to a guilty plea or to a jury trial and conviction, oftentimes move on to the Department of Corrections. So our sentenced offenders are mostly getting electronic monitoring sentences. Now, by contract with those offenders, they agree not to commit any crimes, not to go outside of the geo-fenced area, not to consume alcohol, not to consume drugs. And oftentimes, those folks can't make it through electronic monitoring, that gets revoked administratively. So then they'll sit out the remainder of a jail term. So if they're 20 days into a 60-day EM sentence and they, show up hot for methamphetamine, for example, the remaining 40 days wouldn't be imposed.
They are serving those then?
When
They're
we
not getting a second and third and
No,
fourth chance in that program?
No, the courts have been very hands-off in that it's very much an administrative revocation, and they're not going to get into those fights.
Yeah, and I don't think cost recovery is a silver bullet. There is no silver bullet in terms of crime control. But I think what I'm trying to get at is, and hopefully maybe the legislature will consider this, is whether or not we're keeping pace with our law enforcement cost, as well as the mechanism of how we fund it. Crime control at the county level here is funded by taxpayers. But we can't dip into sales tax, and we don't have fee recovery right now. And I don't think we do. I mean, I don't think judges are handing out restitution on this to go towards the county.
No.
And so, it's not gonna be a silver bullet, but I'm just trying to get a gauge or a bead on, you know, how do we attack this thing?
I could certainly put some numbers together with our felony numbers as it relates to controlled substance cases and DWI, you know, thirds, fourths, and on, to give you an idea of what that might look like at either a $25 fee or a $50 fee.
Counties have asked for assistance in this for years. The most common was a tax on alcohol, which continuously got turned down by the state. As far as the user, these individuals, you might get the person, like you indicated, the DUI, you might have some funds. These people don't. They're stealing because they don't have the money to start with. Trying to put another fee onto them is gonna be an administrative for the auditor's office to try to put a lien on them down the road. It sounds good. I think it's a good PR thing for the state. I just don't see how it functions. The state's gonna have to, because they control how this functions, change the rules and be willing to step up and help counties pay for these costs. And they can either decide to do it through a drink tax or some other function, but it's time that they do that and stop saying that, you know, they're just going to keep voting for no new taxes. That's all fine and dandy, but it ultimately, there is taxes. It's coming back to the property owners that are, you know, paying for all this stuff.
Correct.
Just to clarify, it's the clerk of courts who tracks fines and fees, right? Not the
Correct.
auditors.
Our auditors would track ordered costs of prosecution.
Yep.
Those are no, that would go through the clerk's office as well. So we assess costs of prosecution and drug testing and transcript fees and sometimes our expert witness fees, et cetera. But that would go through the clerk's office. Our auditor's office tracks court-appointed counsel fees, et cetera.
Yeah, and depending on, Commissioner, your points, well, to discuss it, is that depending on how that fee structure was evaluated, who would be appointing that, and if that would be a fee that'd be similar to a court-appointed attorney, or what that would be, so.
Okay. Thank
Anything
you.
else? Well done, thank
Yep,
you.
thank you.
That leaves you.
That leaves me.
It does.
All right, so mine is, the first one of mine is on, well, let's do Board of Commissioners. I made some changes on your guys's.
Page.
Which page, please?
That one, page 3.
Page 3.
Thank you.
I made changes on your guys' accounts. Rather than putting everything under commissioners' fees and books, I kind of broke them out a little bit. The fees and contracts that I've got on there is for the state auditor. Publishing, I've lowered down a little bit because we did have 100,000, but it doesn't seem that it's running that high. I think right now we're at, if we were to go the full year, it'd be 85, so I lowered that down. Your supplies and materials, what that is like the rubber stamps that you need or any other little miscellaneous. Your travel and conference would be the going to Pier or wherever you go to a conference at. Training is the fees for the Sudeco. Utilities, that's for internet, everybody gets that. And then your dues and subscription is gonna, you'll see the breakdown of that under your budget listing, I think. On what I've got included under that. Yeah. So it says that we've got Canton Chamber of Commerce for 110, Sioux Falls Development Foundation 250, Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce 400, Sudeco and NACO 7684. So yeah, under your budget listing on the second page, you'll see the notes there that say what it's for. I thought that might be a clearer way for you guys to look at the budget and cause less confusion from the concerns that I had last year regarding your budget. I don't know how you feel about the numbers, but you'll note, you know, the one thing that we are missing is when we do the extraordinary things. You'll see that the total activity so far for 2022 under what was commissioner fees and books is 135,661. We budgeted 60,000. So I have the concern there. And that, what it used to be is a catch-all for the unbudgeted things that you guys would decide to do that was a fee associated to it. So I don't know if you want me to add another line in there, and what do you want me to name it? How do you want me to track it? I can put it under fees and contracts, because basically that's really what it comes from. But I know that the 30,000 under fees and contract is a for sure, because we have the audit every year. If you want me to increase that number, then I can do that.
Sherry, we don't have anything in here for mileage compensation.
Nope.
We took that away a few
Yep.
years ago.
You did.
I would like to see us explore bringing that back. There are many things that we drive to that are obligations that we have. And I think that commissioners do deserve to at least be compensated for some of that mileage that they incur.
Okay.
I don't think we could go back to find out, we took that away about, what, 2 years ago?
2 or 3, yep.
Yeah.
What do you want to put in there for an amount?
I would look at what we were spending before and see what that is and go from there. I don't have a number.
Okay. So what about fees and contracts? Do you want me to increase that by anything for the things that come up, or how do you want to handle that?
Do you expect it to be higher?
Oh, well, I expect it to be higher than the 30,000 because that's just for the audit. Like I said, the dues and subscription was formerly known as commissioner fees and books, and that's where you would put everything into. And so far through June, or is this March? June or March, we are at 135,000. So you're almost double what you budgeted.
If we bought the bank building across the street from us, because we wanted to move our administrative folks over there, and we wanted to retrofit this courthouse to be more courtrooms, where would that money come from?
I would say we'd probably have to do a budget adjustment under buildings and grounds.
Okay.
Well, sure, if you need to adjust that number it doesn't make any sense to have it be too low.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, that's kind of what I'm thinking, but should I go with, you know, it looks like it was 125 in 21 and 135 so far in 22.
Do you have something specific in mind, or?
I don't.
Okay.
This is strictly what you guys passed, and there's no budget for it anywhere else.
What, you want to put it at 150?
For that, just the fees and contracts?
Yeah,
Okay.
What did you say, 150?
150. That doesn't mean you spend it, it's just a budget number, a projection.
Well, it's an authorization, or not an authorization, but it's a number, and it saves you from having to do a budget adjustment.
Supplement.
Or
amend it
supplement.
Later on.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, then I put 230 in for contingency transfers. We didn't quite go that high in 21, but I think that's just a good safe number. Elections, we don't have an election, knock on wood, in 2023, so basically it's just our maintenance contracts and things that we have got. That's how we've typically budgeted it on an off year, is just the maintenance. And some of our maintenance comes from this election cycle. They do a maintenance at the beginning of the year, so it's always a year behind. That's where the 14,000 comes from. Okay, so I'm not gonna go into all the small accounts that I have to do, like the judicial, predatory animal. I think that it might be more useful for you guys to look through those numbers, and then we can talk about them later. But the auditor's, budget is 14,000. And that's for repairs, maintenance, supplies and materials, travel and conference, training, utilities. I've got the travel and conference in there for the 2-3 conferences that we have to do a year.
You're on page 7 now, right?
I am, I'm sorry. Yep, page 7. So that is that part in a nutshell. So just to go over some things on the revenue, CPI this year is 3%. And our preliminary growth number is 5.5. So we're looking at an increase on our tax revenue of 8.5%. And that's where that, you'll see on that first page where I get the current property taxes for 15,488,704. And if you have any questions on any of the revenues, the medical cannabis, we've got the second half of the license coming up. I think we've got 3 or 4 of them. That's why we've got the 75,000 in there. Otherwise, everything else I've just pretty much maintained. Trended it out over the time. So our budget process, what we have to do is I need to get a number for, then I know nobody wants to do this number, but I need to get a number for wages. The numbers that you're looking at right now in the book, you want a close to correct number and they're not. I mean, our wages are just with the step increase. So to get it more comparable, I think we need to have a idea of what you guys are thinking that you might want to put in there. We can always do like we did last year with a couple different options, but it'd be nice to be able to have something in there just so that I know where to go. I didn't do a lot of the reports and things that I did last year because they would only be half done. And I didn't think that was fair reporting on half numbers. And then, so July 26th, I'd like to have the provisional budget passed. September 6th, we would have the public hearing, and September 27th would be the final date for adoption.
Can you say that one more time?
July 26th, the provisional budget, I'd like to have that passed. September 6th would be the public hearing, and September 27th would be the final date of adoption. The difference between the dates is anything we pass after the provisional budget, we'd have to do advertising on. So I'd like to have it as close as we can by the end of July so that we don't have to incur more advertising fees.
Thank you.
Any questions on the first parts of that?
What are the thoughts of the board as far as, what Sherry just asked as far as a number to put in there as a starting point? Don't everybody jump up at once.
Well, I guess we've got to have, one of the data inputs is going to be the cost of insurance, right? So.
So what we typically do is we do a 10% increase for the health insurance. We just automatically build the 10% in there.
We would do that normally as a part of the budget cycle, but if there is a increased demand for a different kind of insurance policy, or different type of insurance coverage, excuse me, does 10% cover that?
It probably wouldn't cover it.
And I'm not expecting you to
No, I
know
know.
that answer.
I
What
know.
I'm suggesting as part of the process is, in order to get these data inputs, do we need to hold some meetings or more work sessions in order to have the insurance people come in and start talking to us about the different plans?
Historically, I think the insurance people haven't come in and talked until after the budget's passed.
Okay.
So if we're thinking on that lines, do you want to budget for a higher increase? And, just to be safe, do a 20% increase. And then if it's not that high, then we save that money.
Because they're gonna want the employees to fill out applications so that they can give us a number.
And I don't believe, well, I guess historically we haven't done it till October, November.
Do you think that maybe historically, we've done it the wrong way?
Nope, that's my understanding is how we had to do it. That's
Yeah,
the
we-
sooner they would get it out there because of the data that they had to build it off of.
We've had those discussions too on why we can't get those cost estimates when we're doing our budget.
They were more accurate the closer to the end of the year you get.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think in that case, if you're, and I can talk to Julia quickly tomorrow and see, switching insurances, what it's looked like over the last couple years, if it's gone. Typically, what I've seen is you switch an insurance, they give you a better deal for the first couple years, and then the third year is when it goes up.
Well, there's gotta be some historical data, but also, I mean, we could
That's
put
what I hope to
100% in there and
Right.
be safe, but
You buy the.
from a budgeting point of view,
Right.
from a public policy
selling
point of
you
view,
the
that doesn't make
insurance at
sense,
low
it
rates.
seems like.
Get you
Well,
that.
I would say that if you're thinking of that, then, I don't know how the insurance could cost us any more.
Well, and
than
you
what it
know,
does.
last time we did this, we had people, Julia came in, we had people, what do you want? Do you want this policy with these better benefits that's gonna cost you more? And it was kind of a split right down the middle, if I remember right, on the numbers.
And last year when we budgeted it, you have to, well, in the last 2 times I've been part of the budget process, we budget 10% and it's never came in that high. Last year, I think it was 6. The year before that, it might have been 8. So, I mean, I think the 10 is a pretty good, I hate to say it, fluff number in the first place.
Okay.
But our insurance is is not what we would like to have for our employees. Everybody admits that.
Right?
So it's gonna cost us more money, so
Well,
rather than
maybe.
quibble on that, why don't you put up 15%? If we don't need that, we don't need it. And then that gives us a little cushion on that. You asked about wages here. We quibbled last year that a step increase is worth about 2.5%. So beyond the 2.5%, where do we want to end up? We got ample data that our neighbors to the north have amply compensated their employees, and that this year they're going to, in addition to all of that, give a 5% increase. So the question always comes back is that an increase? Well, that's a natural thing. I look at that as just a natural thing. I mean, that's what you got. It's a step increase. So how much on top of that do we want to go? Do we want to go 3%, 4%, 5%? I don't know. We're going to have to get serious about this because I think that, we got to be looking at about 7.5%.
There's, in the conversation that we've had tonight and the conversation that Julia had, there's a couple things that were revealed to everybody in the public, to our employees, and to people potentially applying. We are underpaid and over cost for our insurance. So,
Yeah.
I mean, she was saying that it was 17.5 to get it to be comparable to everybody else. So, I mean, it's completely up to you guys, but I think if you're going to say 5%, are we moving in the right direction?
No, we're going backwards.
If I may, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I think the question that I hope I raised, and I'm gonna make it a little clearer, I don't think we get to wait to budget time to make an adjustment. We're behind today, we're behind farther and farther. We are on the risk of losing quality individuals throughout the courthouse, administration, highway. The opportunity for them is immediate elsewhere. I think it would behoove us not to do something as fast as we can to rectify that.
Are you thinking, Commissioner Poppins, of what Minnehaha County did when they gave that 10%?
We are in a market economy where the market has blown past us. And if we don't, and we need to explain it to the taxpayers, so they don't think that we're just frivolously spending their money, but they require services. To do that, we have quality individuals. I am even more concerned about losing the people that we currently have than trying to recruit the people that we need for the future, because today is immediate. And our budget is for the future, and I hope that we make adjustments not only to the wages, but also to the insurance and other benefits, so.
Well, I don't disagree, Commissioner Poppins, at all. I mean, I could see that if you're talking about somewhat of a compensation or bonus situation, which many, many employees are doing. For example, Gage Brothers just gave about I think it was about a 10% to their one-time fee, just to compensate for the inflation and compensate for increased energy costs, et cetera. And that's another story, but I'm looking at what we were gonna put down for a budget increase next year for our staff.
If I could, that would be dependent on what we would do immediate. So if we would do nothing today, you're talking 12-15% in my mind. If we do something immediately, that could be reduced by what we do immediate, so.
Okay.
So what adjustment, if any, do you want Sherry to make to this current budget? So that we're not gonna take any action tonight, but what generally, is there a consensus?
I'd say a minimum of 7 to 7.5%.
I don't know if that's enough.
I'm
I
always open
concur.
to 8 or 10.
It's
I
not
can,
enough.
I think 7.5%,
what
if
I've
we
heard
do
tonight-
7.5% immediately.
I
mean,
what I
we're
heard
15% behind now.
What I heard
I
Julia
don't like
say-
it, it is what it is.
We're 17.5% behind now, and you have to remember that those numbers are a year behind.
We're 17.5% behind.
Correct. It's $2.1 million.
Well, you know what? They're worth it. When you stop and think about it, we're supposed to be in charge of this operation, and the best thing that we can put out is our employees that take care of all the responsibilities that counties have. And we don't have any complaints. We don't have anybody. We're doing a good job. People are satisfied with the services they have. I'm kind of trying to figure out, Commissioner Poppins, how we take the immediate situation and then build back into our budget. So if we're 17.5%, I don't know what that translates to, but if we took and gave everybody $7,500, then we would build back on the percentage, is what you're talking about.
The question I think that we need to look at is the impact and how those are paid for then through our budget. We are sitting on some ARPA money. We're sitting on some growth. The growth and the CPI was not enough to be a revenue neutral type of a budget. We are sitting on some reserves. Reserves, I think, are a vital part of functioning government and for the emergencies that come up. I would hate to say that we will just drain reserves until there's none left. The fact of the matter is, we're a dynamic county growing extremely fast. And the people deserve services. And those services costs, every time we delay, go up and up and up and up. We're looking at doing a public, or a courthouse, possibly a jail. We're being told by the experts that month by month, it goes up 1.5%. So in our deliberation over the years, we've cost the taxpayers substantial amount of money. So I am, hate to say, use the analogy, digging my heels in the sand. It's time that we act.
Do you have?
And if it means more and more meetings to the public, I'd gladly do it to explain it to them, but we have to have them be able to understand what we understand, that, our costs are going up, the services are in demand, crime is skyrocketing, we need to have deputies out, we need to have individuals in the state's attorney's office to handle that. And that's just the variable costs. We have substantial fixed costs that are staring in the face that we have to address as well.
Do you have a number in mind?
Not until we actually discuss how we're gonna pay for it. We need to discuss if we're going to use reserves or if we're going to have a conversation of that unpleasant opt-out.
Sherry, the ARPA money, that can be used for wages, correct?
Well, what I would like to do is, I was gonna discuss this at the next meeting, but since we're not, we can discuss it now. The secretary, or the treasurer said that everybody that got the ARPA money can take $10 million and put it into their general fund as lost revenue. We can state that $10 million is for wages, and that will increase our cash. It will cover the budgets that we already have set. What was our, wages was $11 million last year, so that $10 million, or this year, so the $10 million would be cash sitting in our bank with no strings. And then we'd have the 1.9 that we could actually use for other things, and I was gonna prepare my thing for you next week, and I'll have more on what we can put that on.
I mean, if I was simply to ignore how we pay for it, Commissioner Schmidt, I would say that we are 7.5% immediate and a 7.5% plus a step in our budget. And that still leaves us behind.
Well, I think I'm just thinking out loud, but if CPI is 8.8% right now, like Julia said, why wouldn't we give people that? And say, round it and say, whether it's 8.8 or 9, and then that would be something for immediate consideration, possibly at our next meeting, and then build in another 8 or 9% into this budget so that we have a talking point or starting place at least.
I hope we can do that, Madam Chair, because as much as we would like to say we're going to recruit, I have a small business. I worry more about keeping the people that I have, and I have an ongoing ad for people to come in. They're not coming in. I'm just hoping I keep the people I've got. And if we don't do something immediate to keep the people we've got, that's the bigger problem. Because we have a wonderful staff, and they'll figure out how to do it as long as we have the staff. We don't have the staff, they can't do magic.
So what number do you want Sherry to put in the budget?
Again, what can we pass immediately? If any.
Well, we're not taking any action on that tonight.
I know that. So
So-
I can't tell you budget because I don't know if we're going to do anything immediate or not.
Okay, well, we need numbers to work with. Right now, there's nothing in there.
Can't we just say 10% tonight?
You can say anything, but we
Put
have,
10% in the budget that we're working on and then talk about what to do in the immediate, maybe at the next meeting.
That'd be a good idea.
That would be
Okay.
a suggestion.
I like that as long as there's a consideration of doing something before next month is up.
So let's do that. Let's put it on the agenda to talk about for doing something immediate.
Commissioner Aaron's, any thoughts? I know a lot of times I'll have silence from you until it's time to vote for the budget. We need to participate in this, I think, on everyone, so we don't get to the end day and then have to try to figure out how to get this done.
Well, I think you have the votes without mine, but here's my question. What services are at risk of not being delivered, and what is the quantifiable data that you're using to make that statement? Which ones, which positions? Are you saying 100% of all positions are at risk because we haven't given a mid-year increase? Are you saying 50% are? Are you saying 5% are? And then I think what the public would like to know is, okay, well, detail for me then which specific positions, because essentially what I heard you saying is, we're gonna lose people. Well, who are these people? We don't need to know them by name, but do you have quantifiable data, concrete data to show that? Or are you just going off of griping and complaining?
No, I'm going off of what our HR director had in statements tonight, the workforce that's out there. And unfortunately, the information that you were asking for, we will never have until it's too late.
Well, I disagree. I think large organizations typically are able to assess that kind of information through surveys, through sensing sessions, through confidential surveys, those sorts of things. You know, it's a very typical tool that's used in organizations to make those assessments. So we could find that out. It's just a matter of, do we have the willpower to actually ask the question, gather the data, and take the measurement?
I agree with that. Do we have the time? Do we have the resources? We have our counterparts in other counties, referencing Minnehaha County. They're doing these things and have done them very quickly and before we have, and that is why now we are 17.5% by statistic behind. So anybody that would think that we're not at risk when we're 17.5% behind our counterparts, immediate counterparts, I think we have very loyal people that work for us, but I don't think you need any statistics or study that's gonna tell you you're gonna lose people.
Well, when somebody just makes a comment without providing the data, in the weeds data, policymakers shouldn't just latch on to bold, naked statements and say, yep, thank you for the statement. Let's make a multi-million-dollar decision on that. Now, some can, I prefer not to. The other issue I have is Minnehaha County is a county of 200,000 people. We're a county of 66,000 people. It's not apples to apples. Do we dip into some of the same hiring pool? Of course we do. But we also dip into other hiring pools as well. For example, here in Canton. I mean, for example, can you tell me, and percentage-wise, where all of our workforce lives today?
Oh, we could if we just asked our HR director.
Yeah, and so I think that.
So if you're asking, will I support, if you want to do a study, sure, who's gonna do the study? How much is that study gonna cost us?
And how reliable would it be now
Yeah.
that we know we're 17.5% behind? Any employee watching this meeting is gonna say they're looking.
But there's a difference between looking and leaving.
But I think if we get up to market, we're not only gonna retain what we have, but we're going to invite more people to come in. And Julia did state that we are not having as many applications come in as we have had. And that's the other half of the problem. So if these people, whoever these people are, do leave, and we're already having recruitment issues, and they've got increases all around us, is it gonna be any easier to recruit then if our workforce is leaving?
Well, I don't know. I mean, for the last 4 years, I sat on this board and heard that we have recruitment problems. And 3 years ago, we were 3 years ago, we were comparable. 2 years ago, we were comparable. Now this year, we're not. So, I don't think those so I'm not taking that at face value. Because in the years that we were comparable, why didn't we have these issues? Or did we have these issues? So that's my concern.
If I may, Commissioner, we had heard a statement that we just got 911 after a long, lengthy period of fully staffed. We're sitting in the highway department 4 down.
Yes.
We may or may not have finally filled a position that we advertised up in planning and zoning for how many months? A year, thank you. So the data's there, it's happening, it's real life and what we're facing. And these are, every position in this system now is highly desirable, from secretarial to cleaning to a truck operator to deputy sheriff, state's attorney's office. Every position is desirable if the person's a quality individual.
Well, in
And again, I am more concerned about right now, and I'm not asking for 15% today, but if we don't do something immediately, we're gonna come to next year, January 1st, and it's not going to be, 4 people in the highway. It's not gonna be one person here, not gonna be one person there. There will be exodus, and I am not gonna be the one. I will sit here and tell that I believe, in my years of experience, we have an issue. I don't need to go to a study. We need to get done.
I guess I was kind of looking at my figures, you know, I know that educators certified in this county got approximately a 6.5% increase, and non-certified about a 10%. And they have better insurance than we do. So, I mean, we have to have somewhat of a starting base there. The insurance thing is what really scares me. It just sounds like we don't have a very good plan. And we don't, as a result, we don't have many people in the plan, and that hurts us.
That's what, this is meant for a little levity, but when Mr. Golden told me that one of his recruiting tools was the referring of the Sioux Valley Cafe as one of our bright points to recruit people here, I thought, we're pretty desperate to show them what we got to offer.
No other, I offer
So-
a motion to adjourn.
Just a
Well,
second.
so what I'll do is I will re-prepare the budget sheets with the 10% and wage increase and a 15% for insurance. I mean, we're not by far done yet, so,
Right, we're not married to it, but
no.
starting point.
Yeah, I need something, otherwise I can't do a lot of what I want to do.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions, comments? If not, I'd consider a motion to adjourn.
I'll offer it again.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second,
Thank you. Jerry, call the roll.
Commissioner Aaron's,
yes.
Commissioner Poppins?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes.
Commissioner Landine?
Yes.